Most people believe productivity is about time management. They think if they just had better schedules, better apps, or better motivation, their life would finally move forward. But the truth is simpler and harder. Productivity is not a time problem. It's a mindset problem. You don't procrastinate because you're lazy. You procrastinate because your mind is overloaded, uncertain, or afraid of starting imperfectly. You don't struggle with consistency because you lack discipline. You struggle because you haven't learned how to think like a consistent person. This book is not here to push you harder. It's here to help you think clearer, because when your mindset changes, effort stops feeling forced. Action becomes natural, and progress becomes inevitable. Real productivity doesn't begin when you feel motivated. It begins the moment you decide to act without waiting for motivation to arrive. In this audiobook, you will learn how to build discipline without burning out, focus in a world designed to distract you, stop overthinking and start finishing, and most importantly, become the kind of person who follows through. This is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters, consistently. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need permission. You only need a mindset that supports action instead of fighting it. So take a breath, let go of the pressure to be perfect, and prepare to build a productivity mindset that lasts, not for a week, but for life. This is the Productivity Mindset Playbook, and it starts now. Chapter 1. Why motivation is unreliable. Motivation is often treated like the fuel for success. We wait for it, we chase it, we depend on it. We tell ourselves, I'll start when I feel motivated. Tomorrow, I'll wake up inspired. Once I'm in the mood, I'll finally be consistent. But motivation is not a foundation, it's a feeling, and feelings are temporary. Some mornings you wake up energized, focused, and ready to take on the world. Other mornings, getting out of bed feels like a challenge. Nothing dramatic has changed. Your goals are the same. Your responsibilities are the same. Yet your drive is gone. This is the problem with relying on motivation. It comes and goes. It rises with excitement and disappears at the first sign of resistance. If productivity depended on motivation alone, no one would ever build anything meaningful. The most consistent people are not the most motivated. They are the most committed. They don't wait to feel ready. They act because that's who they are. And this is where the real shift begins. Motivation is a reaction, not a strategy. Motivation is usually a response to something external. A speech inspires you. A video fires you up. A new goal excites you. But external motivation fades quickly. The moment progress slows, the moment effort becomes uncomfortable, the moment results don't show up immediately, motivation disappears. This is why people start strong and quit quietly. They confuse excitement with discipline. True productivity doesn't come from emotional highs. It comes from repeatable behavior, even on ordinary days. The days when nothing feels special. The days when progress is invisible. The days when quitting would be easier. Motivation cannot carry you through those days. Only systems and identity can. Why willpower fails? Many people believe they lack willpower. They say things like, I'm just not disciplined. I don't have self-control. I wish I had more drive. But willpower is not infinite. It drains with stress, decisions, emotions, and fatigue. Every time you rely on willpower alone, you are placing your productivity on a fragile resource. That's why you can be disciplined in one area of life and completely inconsistent in another. It's not a character flaw, it's a system problem. When your environment and habits are not designed to support action, willpower gets exhausted fast. Productive people don't fight themselves every day. They remove friction. They simplify decisions. They build systems that make action easier than avoidance. Systems beat motivation. Every time a system is something you follow regardless of how you feel. It doesn't require inspiration. It doesn't depend on mood. It doesn't negotiate. A system says, this is what I do. Not when I feel like it. Not when I'm motivated. But because it's part of who I am. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't need motivation. You don't debate it. You don't wait for the perfect moment. You do it because it's automatic. The goal of productivity is not to feel motivated every day. It's to make progress automatic. When action becomes part of your routine, motivation becomes optional. Identity is the real driver of action. Here's the truth most people miss. You don't act based on what you want. You act based on who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who struggles with consistency, your actions will always reflect that belief. If you identify as someone who never finishes, you'll find reasons to stop. But when your identity changes, behavior follows. Productive people don't say, "I'm trying to be disciplined." They say, "I am disciplined." Not because they're perfect, but because they act in alignment with that identity more often than not. Every small action is a vote for the person you're becoming. Every time you follow through, you reinforce trust in yourself. Every time you quit, you weaken it. This is why productivity begins with identity, not effort. Productivity starts with self-trust. Self-trust is the foundation of consistency. If you don't trust yourself to follow through, you'll overplan, overthink, and overpromise. You'll keep restarting. You'll keep looking for new methods. You'll keep doubting yourself, not because you lack ability, but because you lack evidence. Self-trust is built by keeping small promises, not big dramatic goals, not overnight transformations, small repeatable actions. When you say you'll do something, and you do it, trust grows. When you say you'll do something, and you don't, trust erodes. Productivity is not about intensity, it's about integrity with yourself. Why starting small is powerful. Many people underestimate small actions. They think consistency only counts if it's impressive. They believe effort only matters if it's extreme. But small actions are powerful because they are sustainable. Doing a little every day builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence builds identity. And identity creates long-term change. You don't need to overhaul your life. You need to prove to yourself that you can start and continue. One focused task, one intentional habit, one promise kept today. That's enough. Morning productivity is a mindset, not a mood. In the morning, motivation is unpredictable. Some days you wake up inspired, other days you wake up heavy. Waiting for motivation in the morning is a mistake. Instead, anchor your mornings to identity. Ask yourself, what does the person I'm becoming do first? Not what feels easy, not what feels exciting, but what builds trust. Even 5 minutes of focused effort can change the direction of your day. Action creates clarity. Clarity creates motivation, not the other way around. Redefining discipline is not punishment. It's not harshness. It's not forcing yourself through pain. Discipline is choosing long-term respect over short-term comfort. It's doing the work even when no one is watching, even when progress is slow, even when motivation is absent, not because you're trying to be perfect, but because you're committed to becoming someone you respect. The new rule of productivity. Here is the rule that changes everything. Never rely on motivation. Rely on identity and systems. Motivation is a bonus, not a requirement. If you wait to feel ready, you'll wait forever. If you act because it's who you are, progress becomes inevitable. Reflection for today. Before you move on with your day, ask yourself, what is one small action I can take today, even without motivation? What promise can I keep with myself, no matter how small? Who am I becoming with my actions today? Remember this, you don't need more motivation, you need more self-trust. And self-trust is built one action at a time. This is where your productivity journey truly begins. Chapter 2. Productivity is emotional, not logical. Most people believe productivity is a logical problem. They think if they just plan better, organize more, or think harder, they will finally take action. But if logic were enough, you would already be consistent. You already know what to do. You know what matters. You know what would improve your life. Yet, knowing doesn't always lead to doing. This is because productivity is not driven by logic. It is driven by emotion. Until you understand this, you will keep blaming yourself for a problem you were never meant to solve with willpower alone. Why we avoid important work. Procrastination is often labeled as laziness, but laziness is rarely the real issue. People don't avoid work because it's hard. They avoid work because of how it makes them feel. Uncertainty, fear of failure, fear of success, fear of not being good enough, fear of starting and not finishing. These emotions live beneath the surface. When you sit down to do meaningful work, your brain doesn't ask, "Is this important?" It asks, "Is this safe?" If the task feels overwhelming, uncomfortable, or threatening to your self-image, your mind looks for escape. Scrolling, cleaning, checking messages, doing easier tasks, not because you're weak, but because your brain is trying to protect you from emotional discomfort. The emotional weight of expectations. One of the biggest productivity blockers is expectation. When a task carries heavy expectations, it becomes emotionally charged. This has to be perfect. This could change everything. I can't mess this up. The higher the expectation, the heavier the emotional load. And the heavier the emotional load, the harder it is to start. This is why people procrastinate most on the tasks that matter most. Not because they don't care, but because they care too much. Overwhelm is an emotional state. Overwhelm is not caused by too much work. It's caused by too much pressure. Pressure to perform, pressure to keep up, pressure to prove something. When your mind feels overwhelmed, it shuts down. Focus disappears. Clarity fades. Logic says, "Just start." Emotion says, "I can't handle this right now." And emotion usually wins. Why planning feels safer than doing. Planning feels productive because it avoids emotional risk. Planning doesn't expose you to failure. It doesn't test your ability. It doesn't require vulnerability. Action does. This is why people spend hours planning, researching, and preparing, but never execute. Planning gives the illusion of progress without emotional discomfort. But growth only happens through action. Productivity requires emotional regulation. If productivity were logical, robots would be the most productive beings on the planet. Humans are different. We are emotional first, logical second. This means the real productivity skill is not time management, it's emotional management. The ability to stay present with discomfort, the ability to act despite uncertainty, the ability to lower emotional resistance. When you can regulate your emotions, productivity follows naturally. Lowering the emotional barrier to action. The goal is not to eliminate discomfort. That's impossible. The goal is to make starting feel safe enough. This is why small steps matter. Your brain is far more willing to engage with a task that feels manageable. 5 minutes instead of an hour. 1 paragraph instead of a chapter. 1 email instead of clearing the entire inbox. Small actions reduce emotional resistance. Once you start, momentum takes over. Action changes emotion, not the other way around. Most people wait to feel ready before acting, but emotion doesn't create action. Action creates emotion. Clarity comes after movement. Confidence comes after effort. Motivation comes after starting. The moment you take action, your emotional state begins to shift. Your mind sees evidence that you are capable. Fear loses power. Momentum builds. Why self-criticism kills productivity. Many people respond to procrastination with harsh self-talk. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just do this? I'm so undisciplined. This creates shame, and shame is emotionally paralyzing. You cannot shame yourself into productivity. Progress comes from self-compassion paired with responsibility. Understanding your emotions does not excuse avoidance. It empowers action. Creating emotional safety for deep work. Deep, meaningful work requires emotional safety. You need to feel allowed to start imperfectly, make mistakes, learn as you go. When you remove the pressure to be perfect, starting becomes easier, progress becomes lighter, and productivity becomes sustainable. The emotional truth about focus distraction is not always about technology. It's about avoidance. When a task feels emotionally heavy, distraction becomes relief. To improve focus, reduce emotional resistance, Simplify the task. Lower expectations. Focus on progress, not performance. Morning emotions set the tone. Mornings are emotionally sensitive. How you speak to yourself early in the day shapes your productivity. If you start the day with pressure, comparison, or self-judgment, your mind resists effort. If you start with calm intention and a small win, momentum builds. You don't need a perfect morning routine. You need an emotionally supportive one. Reframing productivity. Productivity is not about forcing yourself. It's about understanding yourself. When you respect your emotions instead of fighting them, action becomes easier. You stop working against your mind and start working with it. The emotional rule of productivity. Here is the rule to remember. If you're stuck, don't ask, "What should I do?" Ask, "What am I feeling right now?" Then lower the emotional barrier to action. Reflection for today. Before you continue your day, reflect. What task am I avoiding and why? What emotion is beneath that avoidance? What is the smallest action I can take to feel safe starting? Remember this, you are not lazy, you are human. Productivity is not about logic alone. It's about learning to move forward, even when emotions are loud. And when you master that, consistency becomes inevitable. Chapter 3. Identity before habits. Most people try to change their lives by changing what they do. They chase new habits, new routines, new systems. They download planners, they set reminders, they start strong, and then, slowly, everything fades. Not because habits don't work, but because habits without identity don't last. If you want real, lasting productivity, you must start deeper than behavior. You must start with who you believe you are. Because habits are not the root, they are the result. Why? Habits alone don't stick. Habits are powerful, but they are fragile when built on the wrong foundation. If your identity stays the same, your habits will always pull you back. You can force yourself to wake up early for a week. You can push yourself to work harder for a month. But eventually, your old identity reasserts itself. The mind asks quietly, "Is this really me?" And if the answer is no, resistance begins. Lasting change happens when habits feel natural, not forced. And habits feel natural only when they align with identity. Identity is the invisible driver. Identity is the story you tell yourself about who you are. I'm the kind of person who finishes what they start. I'm someone who struggles with consistency. I'm disciplined. I'm always behind. These statements shape behavior more than motivation ever will. Your actions are simply evidence of the identity you already believe in. You don't wake up every day deciding who to be. You act on autopilot, guided by your self-image. This is why productivity is not about trying harder. It's about becoming someone different. Why willpower feels exhausting when habits conflict with identity. They drain energy. You are not just doing the task, you are fighting yourself. But when habits align with identity, they feel lighter. You don't need motivation to act in alignment with who you believe you are. A runner runs. A writer writes. A disciplined person shows up, not because it's easy, but because it's who they are. The shift from trying to being, pay attention to the language you use. I'm trying to be productive. I'm trying to be disciplined. I'm trying to stay consistent. Trying implies uncertainty. Trying implies temporary effort. Now compare that to I am someone who takes action. I am someone who shows up. I am someone who follows through. This shift is subtle but powerful. Identity-based statements give your mind direction. They remove negotiation. You become what you repeatedly prove. Identity is not built by affirmation alone. It's built by evidence. Every action you take is a vote for the person you are becoming. One action won't define you, but repeated actions will. You don't become productive overnight. You become productive by consistently proving it to yourself. Small proof matters. Showing up for 5 minutes still counts. Finishing a small task still counts. Your mind is always watching. Why small wins matter more than big goals. Big goals are inspiring, but small wins are transformational. Big goals live in the future. Small wins build identity in the present. Every time you complete a small task, you send a message to your brain, "This is who I am." Over time, that message becomes belief. Belief becomes identity. Identity becomes habit. Identity is built in quiet moments. Identity is not built in dramatic moments. It's built in ordinary ones, when no one is watching, when motivation is low, when quitting would be easy. Those moments define who you are becoming. Not the highlight days, but the normal ones. Stop chasing motivation. Build standards. Motivation asks, "How do I feel today?" Identity asks, "What do I stand for?" Standards remove emotional decision-making. A standard says, "I show up, even when it's uncomfortable. I finish what I start. I do the work before seeking comfort." Standards are powerful because they are personal. They are promises you keep with yourself. The identity loop. Here's how lasting change really works. Action, evidence, belief, identity, more action. Most people try to skip to belief, but belief comes after action. You don't wait to believe, you act, and belief follows. Redefining productivity identity. Productivity is not about being busy, it's about being intentional. A productive identity sounds like this: I do what matters, even when it's uncomfortable. I keep promises to myself. I start before I feel ready. I don't wait for perfect conditions. This identity creates calm consistency, not burnout. Morning identity sets the day. Mornings are powerful identity moments. The first action you take is a signal. When you choose intention over impulse, you reinforce discipline. You don't need a perfect routine. You need a meaningful first action, one that aligns with the person you're becoming. Let go of old labels. Many people cling to identities that no longer serve them. I'm lazy. I'm inconsistent. I always fall off. These are not truths. They are outdated stories. You are allowed to rewrite them. But rewriting identity requires new evidence. How to start building a new identity. Today, don't aim to change everything. Choose one identity. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to become? Then ask, what would that person do today, even in a small way? Then do it. That's it. No pressure, no perfection, just proof. Discipline becomes natural when identity is clear. When identity is clear, discipline stops feeling like force. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop waiting for motivation. You act because it's aligned. This is the deepest level of productivity. The rule of identity-based productivity. Here is the rule to remember. Don't focus on what you want to achieve. Focus on who you want to become. Habits will follow. Reflection for today. Before you continue your day, reflect. Who am I becoming through my daily actions? What small action can I take today to reinforce that identity? What old label am I ready to let go of? Remember this: you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your identity. Choose it wisely. This is how productivity becomes effortless, and how consistency becomes who you are. Chapter 4. Discipline is a skill, not a personality trait. Many people believe discipline is something you're born with. They look at consistent, focused people and assume those individuals are simply wired differently. More motivated, more focused, more driven. And when they struggle, they quietly tell themselves, "That's just not me." But discipline is not a personality trait. It is a skill. And like any skill, it can be trained. The biggest myth about discipline. The biggest myth about discipline is that it requires constant strength. That disciplined people wake up every day feeling ready, that they never feel resistance, that they never want to quit. That's not discipline. That's fantasy. Discipline is not the absence of resistance. It's the ability to move forward despite it, and that ability is built through repetition. Discipline is learned through action. You don't become disciplined by thinking about discipline. You become disciplined by practicing it. Every time you do something you said you would do, especially when it's uncomfortable, you train discipline. It's no different than building muscle. One repetition won't change much, but over time, the strength builds. Skipping doesn't mean failure. Quitting does. Why waiting for motivation? Weakens discipline. Motivation feels good, but it's unreliable. If you only act when you feel motivated, discipline never develops. Why? Because discipline grows when action is taken without motivation. That's when the skill is trained. Every uncomfortable action is a repetition. Discipline and self-respect are connected. Discipline is not about punishment, it's about self-respect. Every time you follow through, you send yourself a message: I can trust myself, and trust builds confidence. Lack of discipline is not about laziness, it's about broken trust. When you repeatedly promise yourself and don't follow through, confidence erodes. Discipline restores it. Small wins build self-respect. Many people think discipline requires massive effort, long hours, extreme routines, total lifestyle overhauls. But that approach fails most people. Small wins are the real builders of discipline, because small wins are repeatable. 5 minutes of focused work, one habit completed, one task finished. Each one is a deposit into your self-respect account. Why consistency beats intensity? Intensity feels impressive. Consistency builds results. Anyone can go all in for a short period. Few can show up calmly, repeatedly, and without drama. Intensity leads to burnout. Consistency leads to identity. You don't need to do everything. You need to do something regularly. Discipline thrives in simplicity. The more complicated your plan, the more discipline it requires. Simple systems remove friction. One clear task, one defined habit, one non-negotiable action. Simplicity protects discipline. Daily discipline is quiet. Discipline is rarely dramatic. It's choosing to work when it would be easier to avoid. It's stopping when rest is needed. It's doing the basics well. No applause, no spotlight, just quiet consistency. The role of environment in discipline is not just internal. Your environment either supports discipline or drains it. Reduce distractions, prepare your space, make the right choice easier. This is not weakness, it's wisdom. Discipline without self-compassion fails. Discipline without compassion turns into self-criticism, and self-criticism kills consistency. Mistakes are part of training. Missing a day does not erase progress. Quitting does. Return calmly. Continue forward. Morning discipline sets the tone. The first disciplined action of the day matters, not because it's big, but because it's intentional. One small win in the morning creates momentum. Momentum reduces resistance, redefining what it means to be disciplined. A disciplined person is not rigid. They are reliable. They do what they said they would do, most of the time. That's enough. The discipline skill loop. Discipline grows like this. Small commitment. Follow through, self-trust, increased confidence, larger commitments. You don't start big, you grow into it. Why discipline feels easier over time. The first repetitions are the hardest. Over time, resistance decreases. What once felt uncomfortable becomes normal. Discipline becomes identity. The long-term power of consistency. Consistency compounds. Small daily actions create massive long-term change. You don't see it immediately, but it's happening. Trust the process. The rule of discipline here is the rule to remember. Discipline is built through daily practice, not perfection. You don't need to be extreme. You need to be consistent. Reflection for today. Before moving forward, reflect. What small action can I commit to daily? How can I simplify my approach? How can I build discipline without pressure? Remember this, you are not undisciplined. You are untrained. And training begins today. Discipline is a skill, and you are capable of learning it. Chapter 5. Focus is your greatest asset. In today's world, focus is rare. Not because people don't care, but because everything is competing for their attention. Notifications, messages, news, endless content. Attention is pulled in 100 directions before the day even begins. And yet, focus is the single greatest asset you can develop. Not talent, not intelligence, not even motivation. Focus, because whatever you consistently focus on grows. Why focus determines your results. Your life is shaped by what you give your attention to. Your skills grow where your focus goes. Your problems grow where your focus stays stuck. Your confidence grows where your focus is intentional. Two people can work the same number of hours and get completely different results. The difference is not effort, it's focus. Scattered attention creates scattered progress. Directed attention creates momentum. Focus is not about working harder. Many people confuse focus with intensity. They think focus means grinding longer hours, pushing harder, and forcing concentration. But real focus is not forceful. It's selective. It's the ability to decide this matters and this does not. Focus is not about doing more things. It's about doing fewer things with presence. The cost of distraction. Distraction doesn't just waste time. It fragments your mind. Every time you switch tasks, your brain pays a cost. It takes time and energy to re-enter deep thinking. This constant switching creates mental fatigue. You feel busy but unfulfilled, occupied but unproductive. The danger is not distraction itself. The danger is becoming comfortable with shallow attention. Why multitasking is a myth. Multitasking feels efficient, but the brain does not multitask. It switches, and each switch weakens focus. Deep work requires uninterrupted attention. The ability to stay with one task long enough for clarity to emerge. That's where progress lives. Focus is an identity skill. Just like discipline, focus is not a personality trait. It's a skill and an identity. People who focus don't say, "I'll focus if I feel like it." They say, "This is what I do." They design their environment, habits, and expectations around attention. Focus becomes part of who they are. Why focus feels so hard? Focus feels difficult because your brain is overstimulated. Constant input trains the mind to crave novelty. Silence feels uncomfortable. Stillness feels boring. But boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is the doorway to depth. The moment you stay with discomfort instead of escaping it, focus strengthens. Focus begins with one clear priority. Focus does not mean having many goals. It means having one priority in the moment. When everything is important, nothing truly is. A focused day begins with a single question. What is the one thing that would make today meaningful? Not 10 things, not a perfect list. One thing. That clarity removes mental noise. The power of single tasking is a lost art. Doing one thing at a time fully creates flow. Flow is the state where effort feels lighter. Time passes faster. Results improve. You don't need more time. You need deeper engagement with the time you already have. Protecting your attention focus is fragile. It must be protected. That means setting boundaries, reducing interruptions, saying no to unnecessary input. This is not selfish. It's responsible. If you don't protect your attention, the world will consume it for you. Your environment shapes your focus is easier in a supportive environment. Clutter creates mental noise. Distractions invite avoidance. A clean, intentional space signals seriousness. Even small adjustments help. Clearing your workspace, turning off notifications, creating a focus ritual. These are not tricks. They are signals to your brain. The role of rest in focus cannot exist without rest. A tired mind resists depth. Rest is not the opposite of productivity. It's part of it. Strategic rest sharpens attention. Short breaks, quality sleep, intentional pauses. These reset your ability to focus. Morning focus sets the direction. The first focused action of the day matters. It anchors attention before distractions take over. You don't need a long session. Even 10 minutes of intentional focus builds momentum. Start the day by choosing depth over noise, focus and emotional avoidance. Sometimes lack of focus is not distraction, it's avoidance. avoidance of discomfort, avoidance of uncertainty, avoidance of effort. When focus feels impossible, ask, what am I avoiding feeling? Then lower the barrier. Make the task smaller. Make the start gentler. Focus returns when emotional resistance is reduced. Training, focus daily. Focus improves with practice, not by forcing long sessions, but by repeated intentional moments. 5 minutes of full attention, then 10, then 20. Just like discipline, focus grows gradually. The difference between urgent and important tasks demand attention. Important tasks deserve attention. Focus means choosing importance over urgency. Emails feel urgent, messages feel urgent, but deep work shapes your future. Choose accordingly. Focus builds confidence. When you focus deeply, you finish more. Finishing builds confidence. Confidence makes focus easier. This is a positive cycle. The focus rule here is the rule to remember. Protect your attention like your future depends on it, because it does. You don't need more information, you need more intention. Reflection for today. Before moving on, reflect. Where does my attention go most often? What distractions can I reduce today? What is one task I can give my full focus to? Remember this, your ability to focus is your greatest asset in a distracted world. Train it, protect it, respect it, because what you focus on is what your life becomes. Chapter 6. The one-task rule. Most people don't struggle with productivity because they do too little. They struggle because they try to do too much at once. Too many goals, too many priorities, too many open loops in the mind. And when everything feels important, the brain shuts down. This chapter introduces a simple but powerful idea, the one-task rule. One task, one focus, one meaningful action at a time. This rule doesn't limit your progress, it unlocks it. Why overwhelm kills action? Overwhelm is not caused by lack of ability, it's caused by lack of clarity. When your mind holds too many unfinished tasks, it feels heavy, scattered, uncertain. The brain is not designed to carry everything at once. When faced with too many choices, it often chooses avoidance. That's why you freeze. That's why you procrastinate. That's why you feel busy but unproductive. The solution is not more effort, it's fewer decisions. The illusion of multitasking. Many people believe productivity means juggling multiple tasks. They switch between emails, messages, projects, and plans thinking they're being efficient. But multitasking fragments attention. Progress slows, mistakes increase, mental fatigue builds. The mind performs best when it knows exactly what it's working on. The one-task rule gives the brain clarity. What the one-task rule really means. The one-task rule does not mean you only do one thing per day. It means that at any given moment, only one task deserves your full attention. Not 3, not 5, 1. You choose it intentionally. You commit to it fully. Then you move on. This creates calm momentum. Why one task creates more progress than many? When attention is divided, effort is diluted. When attention is focused, progress accelerates. One task done well creates completion, confidence, momentum reduces resistance. Resistance is what slows you down. The fastest way forward is often the simplest. Clarity creates energy. Energy is not just physical, it's mental. Unclear priorities drain energy. Clear priorities restore it. When you know exactly what you're doing next, the mind relaxes. No debate, no hesitation, just action. The emotional power of finishing matters more than starting. Every unfinished task creates mental noise. Every finished task creates relief. Relief builds confidence. Confidence builds motivation. The one-task rule increases completion, and completion changes how you see yourself. You stop feeling behind. You start feeling capable. Why the first task of the day matters most. The first task sets the tone. If you start the day reacting, checking messages, scrolling, responding, you give your attention away. If you start the day choosing one meaningful task, you take control. That single decision can shift the entire day, not because the task is big, but because it's intentional. Choosing the right one task. The right task are not always the easiest. It's the task that moves your life forward even slightly. Ask yourself, what one task, if completed today, would make today successful? Not perfect, successful. That's your task, lowering the bar to start. The mind resists tasks that feel heavy. So lower the entry point. Don't commit to finishing the entire task. Commit to starting. 5 minutes. One page, one small step. Starting creates momentum. Momentum carries you further than force ever will. One task at a time builds trust. When you focus on one task and complete it, you build self-trust. You prove, I can focus, I can finish, I can follow through. Self-trust reduces overthinking. Overthinking disappears when action becomes reliable. The one-task rule reduces stress often comes from mental clutter. Unclear priorities, too many expectations, too much pressure. One task brings simplicity. Simplicity brings calm. Calm improves focus. Why doing less often produces more productivity is not about volume. It's about impact. One meaningful task done consistently creates more progress than 10 shallow ones. Depth beats speed. Always protecting the one task. Once you choose your one task, protect it. Silence notifications. Close unnecessary tabs. Create a short focus window. Even 10 uninterrupted minutes can change the outcome. The role of patience. The one-task rule teaches patience. It trains you to stay with one thing long enough for progress to show. In a world obsessed with speed, patience is a competitive advantage. How the one-task rule builds identity. Every time you follow the one-task rule, you reinforce identity. I am someone who focuses. I am someone who finishes. I am someone who simplifies. Identity shapes behavior. This rule reshapes both. Using the one-task rule when motivation is low on low-energy days, the one-task rule is especially powerful. Instead of doing nothing, you do one thing. Instead of quitting the day, you salvage it. One task is always manageable, letting go of the need to do everything. You don't need to do everything today. You need to do something that matters. Let go of unrealistic expectations. Progress is built slowly, not dramatically. The discipline of choosing one task requires discipline. But it removes the discipline needed to choose again and again. Decision fatigue disappears, clarity remains. The rule in practice. Each day, choose one meaningful task, focus on it fully, complete it or move it forward. That's it. Simple does not mean easy, but it works. The long-term effect of the one-task rule. Over time, this rule changes how you work. You become calmer, more focused, more consistent. Progress compounds, not through intensity, but through clarity. The one-task rule for life. This rule applies beyond work, one conversation at a time, one habit at a time, one decision at a time. Presence improves everything it touches. The rule to remember. Here it is, clearly. If everything feels important, choose one thing and do it well. You don't need more time, you need fewer priorities. Reflection for today. Before you continue your day, ask yourself, what is the one task that matters most today? What distractions can I temporarily remove? How can I give this task my full attention? Remember this, focus creates progress. Progress builds confidence. Confidence fuels consistency. One task at a time is not slow. It's how meaningful work is actually done. And when you master this rule, productivity becomes calm, intentional, and sustainable. Chapter 7. How to beat procrastination permanently. Procrastination is one of the most misunderstood struggles in productivity. People think it's about laziness, a lack of discipline, a lack of motivation. But procrastination is not a character flaw. It is a signal that something inside you is resisting action. And until you understand what that resistance is, procrastination will keep returning no matter how many plans you make. Why procrastination exists? Procrastination exists to protect you, not from work, but from discomfort. When your brain senses emotional risk, uncertainty, or pressure, it looks for relief. That relief often comes in the form of delay, scrolling, organizing, doing easier tasks, not because you don't care, but because part of you is trying to feel safe. Procrastination is not the enemy. Avoidance is the symptom, the emotional roots of procrastination. At the core of procrastination are emotions: fear of failure, fear of success, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough. Sometimes it's not even fear, it's overwhelm. When a task feels too big, too vague, or too important, the mind freezes. The brain asks, "What if I mess this up?" And instead of risking that feeling, it chooses comfort. Why logic doesn't cure procrastination? You already know procrastination is harmful. You've told yourself, "I need to stop doing this. I'll regret it later. I just need to push through." But logic doesn't override emotion. The emotional brain makes decisions first. Logic comes later to explain them. That's why guilt doesn't help. Guilt increases pressure. Pressure increases avoidance. The cycle repeats, the hidden cost of waiting to feel ready. One of the biggest procrastination traps is waiting to feel ready. Ready means confident, calm, clear. But readiness is rarely felt before action. It appears after movement. Waiting to feel ready keeps you stuck in place. Action is the doorway, the start before ready rule. The most effective way to beat procrastination is simple but uncomfortable. Start before you feel ready. Not perfectly, not confidently, just intentionally. Starting breaks the emotional barrier. Once you begin, fear loses its grip. Lowering the emotional barrier to starting procrastination disappears when starting feels safe. So instead of asking, "How do I finish this?" ask, "How do I make this easier to start?" Lower the bar. 5 minutes, one sentence, one small step. Your brain is far more willing to cooperate when the demand feels manageable. Why small starts are powerful. Small starts trick resistance. They bypass fear. Once you begin, momentum takes over. Momentum creates clarity. Clarity builds confidence. Confidence reduces procrastination next time. This is how progress compounds. The role of self-talk in procrastination. The way you speak to yourself matters. Harsh self-talk increases pressure. Pressure fuels avoidance. Instead of, "Why can't I just do this?" try, "Just start small." Compassion reduces resistance. Resistance is what causes procrastination. Perfectionism and procrastination. Perfectionism often hides behind procrastination. If I can't do it perfectly, I won't do it at all. But perfection is a moving target. Waiting for perfect conditions guarantees delay. Progress requires imperfection, reframing, failure. Procrastination thrives when failure feels dangerous, but failure is feedback. Every attempt gives information. When failure is no longer a threat, starting becomes easier. Why procrastination feels worse over time. The longer you delay, the heavier the task feels. Avoidance adds emotional weight. The task doesn't grow, but the pressure does. Starting early keeps the emotional load light. Using time limits instead of pressure paralyzes. Time limits focus. Instead of saying, "I must finish this," say, "I'll work on this for 10 minutes. Time-limited focus reduces fear. Often, you'll continue beyond the limit, but even if you don't, progress was made. Procrastination and identity. If you see yourself as a procrastinator, behavior follows. Change the identity. I am someone who starts even imperfectly. Identity shapes action. Why procrastination is a habit, not a life sentence. Procrastination is learned, and what's learned can be unlearned. Each time you start despite resistance, you weaken the habit. Each time you avoid, you strengthen it. Choose accordingly. Morning procrastination patterns. Procrastination often begins early. Starting the day with avoidance sets the tone. Starting with a small win builds momentum. The first action matters. Designing for less procrastination. Make starting easier. Prepare your workspace. Define the first step. Remove distractions. You're not cheating, you're training your brain. The difference between rest and avoidance. Rest is intentional. Avoidance is unconscious. Learn to recognize the difference. Rest restores energy. Avoidance drains it. The long-term cost of procrastination. Procrastination doesn't just delay tasks. It delays confidence. It delays growth. It delays self-trust. Beating procrastination means reclaiming momentum, the permanent solution. There is no one-time cure, but there is a permanent approach. Lower the barrier. Start small, act before ready. Build self-trust, repeat. The procrastination rule. Remember this, you don't need to feel ready to start. You need to start to feel ready. Reflection for today. Before continuing your day, ask yourself, what am I avoiding right now? What emotion is underneath that avoidance? What is the smallest action I can take immediately? Remember this, procrastination is not who you are. It's a habit you can change. And the moment you begin, even imperfectly, you are already winning. This is how procrastination loses its power. Chapter 8. The Power of Daily Non-Negotiables. Most people believe consistency requires motivation. They think if they could just feel inspired every day, progress would be automatic. But real consistency is built on something much simpler and much stronger. Non-negotiables. Non-negotiables are small actions you commit to doing every day, regardless of mood, energy, or circumstance. They remove debate. They remove hesitation. They remove hesitation. They remove excuses, and in doing so, they create momentum. Why motivation can't sustain consistency? Motivation is emotional. It rises and falls. If consistency depended on motivation, progress would always be temporary. Some days you feel inspired. Other days you don't. Non-negotiables don't care how you feel. They exist to carry you forward when motivation disappears. What non-negotiables really are? A non-negotiable is not a massive commitment. It's not an extreme routine. It's a minimum standard, something so small and clear that skipping it feels harder than doing it. Examples: 5 minutes of focused work, 1 page written, 1 intentional habit completed. These actions may seem small, but they are powerful. Why small daily actions matter more than big occasional effort. Big efforts feel impressive, but they are unpredictable. Small daily actions are reliable, and reliability builds trust. Trust creates confidence. Confidence fuels consistency. This is how progress compounds. Non-negotiables build identity. Every time you honor a non-negotiable, you reinforce identity. I am someone who shows up. I keep promises to myself. I do the basics, even on hard days. Identity grows quietly, not through dramatic breakthroughs, but through daily follow-through. Why non-negotiables remove decision fatigue? Decisions drain energy. Every time you ask, should I do this today, you invite hesitation. Non-negotiables remove the question. There is no debate. This saves mental energy for meaningful work. The emotional safety of non-negotiables. Non-negotiables create emotional safety. They lower pressure. You no longer feel like every day must be perfect. You only need to meet the minimum. And often, once you start, you'll do more. But even if you don't, progress was made. Why non-negotiables work on low-energy days? Low-energy days are unavoidable. Non-negotiables protect momentum during those times. Instead of quitting the day, you anchor it with one action. One action is always possible. Designing the right non-negotiables. The key is simplicity. Your non-negotiables should be clear. small. Achievable even on your worst days. If they feel heavy, they're too big. Consistency matters more than difficulty. Non-negotiables and self-trust. Every broken promise erodes self-trust. Every kept promise restores it. Non-negotiables rebuild trust slowly but steadily, and self-trust is the foundation of discipline. Why most people quit too early? People quit when progress feels invisible. Non-negotiables make progress visible. They provide daily proof. That proof keeps you going. Morning non-negotiables set the tone. The first non-negotiable of the day is powerful. It signals intention. It shifts you from reaction to action. You don't need a long routine. One small intentional act is enough. Non-negotiables versus perfectionism. Perfectionism demands more. Non-negotiables demand consistency. Perfectionism says, if I can't do it all, I won't do it. Non-negotiables say, do the minimum, that's enough. This mindset prevents burnout. When you miss a day, missing a day is not failure. Quitting is. Return calmly, resume the next day. Consistency is built over time, not by never missing, but by always coming back. The long-term power of boring consistency. Non-negotiables are not exciting. They are effective. Most success is built through boring consistency. Those who accept this go further. Non-negotiables reduce overwhelm. When life feels chaotic, non-negotiables provide stability. They give you something solid to hold on to. One action, one anchor, using non-negotiables to rebuild momentum. If you've fallen off track, start here. Don't overhaul your life. Re-establish one non-negotiable. Momentum returns faster than you expect. Why non-negotiables beat motivation? Every time motivation is emotional, non-negotiables are structural. Structure outlasts emotion. This is why they work. Non-negotiables create freedom. It may seem counterintuitive, but structure creates freedom. When the basics are handled automatically, your mind is free. You don't waste energy on decision-making. You focus on what matters. The rule of daily non-negotiables. Here it is. Choose 1 to 3 small actions. Do them every day, no matter what. That's it. Reflection for today. Before you move on, reflect. What is one small action I can commit to daily? Can I do it even on my worst days? How can I remove friction around it? Remember this. You don't need perfect days. You need consistent ones. Non-negotiables turn effort into habit, habit into identity, and identity into lasting change. This is how progress becomes inevitable, one small daily action at a time. Chapter 9. Rest is a productivity tool. In a world that celebrates hustle, rest is often misunderstood. It's seen as weakness, as laziness, as something you earn only after exhaustion. But rest is not the opposite of productivity. Rest is part of productivity. Rest is part of productivity. Without rest, focus fades, discipline weakens, motivation disappears. And yet, many people keep pushing, believing that more effort will fix what exhaustion has broken. It won't. Why rest is essential for progress. Your mind and body are not machines. They need recovery to function well. When you ignore rest, performance declines. You work longer but accomplish less. Rest restores clarity. It sharpens focus. It rebuilds discipline. Productivity without rest is short-lived. The hidden cost of overworking. Overworking doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like constant mental fatigue, difficulty concentrating, irritability, loss of motivation. These are signals, not weaknesses. Ignoring them leads to burnout. Burnout doesn't happen suddenly. It builds slowly through small acts of neglect. Rest improves. Focus requires mental energy. When your mind is tired, attention scatters, distraction increases, procrastination rises. Rest resets attention. Even short breaks can restore clarity. Why rest feels unproductive? Rest feels unproductive because results are invisible. You can't measure recovery the same way you measure output. But recovery determines the quality of your output. What you do while rested matters more than how much you do while exhausted. Rest is not quitting, rest is intentional. Quitting is avoidance. Rest is chosen to support long-term consistency. Quitting avoids responsibility. Learning the difference is crucial. The role of sleep in productivity. Sleep is the foundation. Without quality sleep, productivity strategies fail. Sleep improves memory, focus, and emotional regulation. Skipping sleep is not discipline, it's sabotage. Mental rest versus physical rest is not only physical, mental rest matters just as much. Constant stimulation exhausts the brain. Quiet moments restore it. Silence is productive. Why breaks increase efficiency? Breaks prevent diminishing returns. Working non-stop reduces quality. Stepping away allows insight. Some of your best ideas appear when you stop trying. Rest prevents burnout. Burnout is not caused by work, it's caused by imbalance. Rest protects passion. It keeps productivity sustainable. Morning rest sets the tone. How you start the day matters. Rushing creates tension. Calm creates clarity. You don't need slow mornings, just intentional ones. Guilt-free rest should not come with guilt. Guilt increases stress. Stress reduces recovery. Rest works best when it's accepted. Rest and identity. Rest is not a reward. It's a responsibility. Productive people rest intentionally. They understand recovery is part of success. Rest improves decision-making. Fatigue clouds judgment. Rest improves clarity. Better decisions lead to better outcomes. Rest supports creativity. Creativity requires space. Rest creates that space. Ideas need room to breathe. The balance between effort and recovery. Progress is built in cycles. Effort, recovery, growth. Ignoring recovery breaks the cycle. Recognizing when you need rest. Pay attention to signals. Fatigue is feedback. Honor it. The long-term advantage of rested productivity. Rested people last longer. They are consistent. They avoid burnout. They progress steadily. The rule of rest, here it is. Rest before you break. Don't wait until exhaustion forces it. Reflection for today. Before continuing, reflect. How well am I resting? Where can I add intentional recovery? How can I remove guilt around rest? Remember this, rest is not a pause from progress. It is the process that makes progress possible. When you honor rest, productivity becomes sustainable, calm, and lasting. And that is how success is truly built. Chapter 10. Becoming the person who finishes. Most people start. Few people finish. Ideas are easy. Motivation comes naturally at the beginning. Energy is high when something is new. But finishing is different. Finishing requires patience, consistency, and a deep level of self-trust. This chapter is not about starting strong. It's about becoming the kind of person who follows through, because finishing changes everything. Why finishing matters more than starting feels exciting. Finishing feels uncomfortable. By the time you reach the end of a goal, the excitement has faded. The work feels repetitive. Progress feels slower. This is where most people stop, not because they can't continue, but because they don't see immediate reward. But finishing creates something far more valuable than results. It creates identity, the hidden power of completion. Every time you finish something, you send a powerful message to yourself. I can be trusted. That message builds confidence. Confidence builds momentum. Momentum changes how you approach everything else. Unfinished tasks create doubt. Finished tasks create belief. Belief is what separates dreamers from doers. Why people quit near the end. Many people quit when they are closer than they realize. Why? Because the middle is uncomfortable, but the end is exposed. Finishing means judgment is possible. Failure becomes visible. Success becomes real. Staying unfinished feels safer, but safety never builds growth. Progress feels slower near completion. At the beginning, progress feels fast. Every action feels like movement. Near the end, progress becomes subtle. You're refining, not building, repeating, not discovering. This stage tests commitment, not motivation. The myth of perfect endings. Many people delay finishing because they want perfection. If it's not perfect, it's not done. But perfection is endless. There will always be one more improvement, one more adjustment. Finishing means accepting good enough, and that's a strength, not a weakness. Finishing builds emotional strength. Finishing requires emotional endurance. It means continuing when motivation is gone, results feel distant. Nobody is watching. This endurance strengthens character. You become resilient, grounded, reliable. Why consistency creates finishers? Finishers are not intense. They're consistent. They show up calmly. They continue without drama. They trust the process. They don't rely on bursts of effort. They rely on standards. Breaking the cycle of restarting. Many people are trapped in a cycle of restarting. New plans, new systems, new motivation. But restarting feels productive, without requiring completion. Finishing breaks this cycle. It teaches patience. It builds maturity. Redefining what done means done does not mean flawless. Done means complete. Done means you honored your commitment. Progress comes from completion, not perfection. The emotional relief of finishing creates mental clarity. Unfinished tasks occupy mental space. They create background stress. Completion creates relief. Relief restores energy. Energy fuels the next goal. Becoming a finisher is a choice. You don't become a finisher overnight. You become one decision at a time. Each time you choose to continue instead of quit, you strengthen the identity. I finish what I start. Small finishes matter. You don't need to finish massive projects immediately. Finish small things, daily tasks, simple goals, short commitments. Each finish reinforces the identity. When quitting is tempting, quitting often feels logical. This isn't working. I'll do it later. I'll start fresh. But often, quitting is just discomfort speaking. Pause before deciding. Ask, am I truly done or just tired? Rest without quitting. You can pause without quitting. Rest without abandoning. This distinction matters. Finishers know how to recover without giving up. Finishing changes your standards. Once you become someone who finishes, your standards rise. You no longer tolerate half effort. You respect your time and energy. You move with intention. The long-term impact of finishing compounds. Each completion makes the next one easier. Confidence grows. Fear shrinks. Momentum builds. Over time, you stop doubting yourself. Finishing builds quiet confidence. Finishers don't need external validation. They know what they're capable of. Their confidence is calm. Earned. The difference between busy and complete busy people are always starting. Finishers are always completing. Completion creates results. Results create clarity. Why? This changes productivity forever. Once you trust yourself to finish, productivity becomes simple. You stop over-planning. You stop doubting. You act with clarity. You know you'll follow through, becoming the person who finishes. This is not about force, it's about identity. You are no longer someone who starts strong and fades, relies on motivation, quits when it gets uncomfortable. You are someone who continues, calmly, consistently, intentionally. The final rule of productivity, here it is: start small, show up daily, finish what you begin. That's the playbook. Finally, reflection. Take a moment to reflect. What have I been avoiding finishing? What small commitment can I complete today? Who do I become when I follow through? Remember this, you don't need to do everything. You just need to finish the things that matter, because the person who finishes is the person who grows. And once you become that person, productivity is no longer something you chase, it's simply who you are. Closing, your productivity mindset. You've learned the tools, the strategies, and the mindset shifts. But knowledge alone does not change life. Action does. Productivity is not about doing more. It's about becoming more. It's about building trust with yourself, showing up consistently, and finishing what you start. It's about starting before you feel ready, focusing on one task at a time, and protecting your attention. It's about honoring rest, embracing non-negotiables, and letting small wins accumulate over time. The person you want to become is not a distant goal. It is formed in your daily choices. Every moment you choose action over avoidance, focus over distraction, and consistency over intensity, you reinforce that identity. Every time you rest wisely, follow through on a task, or honor a non-negotiable, you strengthen the foundation of your life. This is not about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about patience. It's about showing up day after day until progress is inevitable. Remember, the productivity mindset is not something you borrow from someone else. It is something you become, one small intentional choice at a time. You are ready. Begin now.